Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are jumping right into a totally fascinating look at the very structures we build our daily lives around. We're going to focus on a concept explored by our source creator, Nick. Now, Nick spends a lot of time thinking about what he calls invisible machines. You know, those systems that just quietly run our lives, dictate our schedules, and honestly, often drain our bank accounts without us even noticing. We tend to just accept so many things as the standard, default way of doing life. But once you actually sit down and break the numbers apart, the whole picture completely flips. So grab a notebook because we're going to look at the biggest invisible machine out there and how it absolutely shatters the way we value our own work.
So let's dive right into this with a number that serves as the ultimate reality check, 60. Now, you probably think you work a standard 40-hour week, right? I mean, you clock it at 9 a.m., you clock out at 5 p.m., and you call it a day. But according to the source material, your job is actually stealing closer to 60 hours of your week. How is that even possible? Well, it's because we consistently, almost universally, fail to factor in the hidden time demands of our careers. By the time we add up the commute, the decompression time, and all those unseen costs of just getting yourself to the office, that 40-hour baseline totally explodes into something much, much larger, and frankly, way more exhausting.
And that brings us to the very core of this invisible machine, the 40-hour trap. We all just kind of accept the standard 40-hour work week as the baseline for a successful, normal life. But the math behind this structure, it's literally a trap. It is perfectly designed to make you feel like you're getting ahead. You know, you see a nice salary on paper, you get the fancy title, you climb the corporate ladder. But underneath that shiny surface level of success, this machine is quietly charging you an absolute fortune just to participate in it. It's a system where the sheer cost of entry constantly chips away at the exact rewards you're working so hard to earn in the first place. Let me ask you something, and be totally honest here. Have you ever gotten a big promotion, taken on a slightly longer commute, and somehow ended up feeling more exhausted and more broke than you were before? It is a wildly common experience, but it feels completely counterintuitive, doesn't it? I mean, you make more money, so naturally you should have more freedom and more energy. But that almost never happens. If you've ever felt this very specific type of frustration, you are definitely not alone, and no, it's not just in your head. We're going to break down the exact step-by-step math of why this happens. To really picture the math here, let's meet two totally different people. First up, there's Zoe. She's a high earner who just landed a massive promotion downtown. Every single morning, she is crawling through the exact same heavy traffic she's sat in since her 20s, gripping a really expensive oat milk latte in the cup holder of her leased SUV. Now, contrast her with Robert. Robert actually works 3 desks down from Zoe, or, well, he used to, before he took a slightly lower-paying, incredibly flexible remote job. Robert spends his Tuesdays making his own coffee in his sweatpants with no alarm clock and absolutely zero commute. Now, if we just look at traditional metrics, a resume, a LinkedIn profile, Zoe is absolutely winning the game. Her salary is way higher than Robert's. She's got the prestigious title, the downtown office, all the visible markers of success. But here is where Nick urges us to look a little deeper. When you strip away all that prestige and look purely at the boring, undeniable math of what is actually happening to their time and their money, the truth is that Zoe is quietly losing. Her success is, in a lot of ways, a total illusion built on uncalculated costs. So how do we figure out who is actually wealthier here? Well, we use something called the true hourly wage. It's a remarkably simple formula. You take your take-home pay and you divide it by the actual hours you commit to your job. The problem, of course, is that almost nobody calculates those actual hours honestly. We tend to only count the time we're physically sitting at our desks, completely ignoring all the hours we are forced to surrender just to maintain that desk job in the first place. Let's actually stack up Zoe's hours to see this in action. She thinks she works a standard 40 hours a week. But let's add her hour-long commute in terrible traffic each way. Boom, that is 10 extra hours a week. Add the hours she spends every single morning ironing clothes, doing her makeup, and getting perfectly ready just to exist in a corporate environment, we are now up to 55 hours. And then comes the decompression. When she gets home, she is so completely wiped out that she spends 2 hours staring at her phone, just doom scrolling on the couch to recover from the day. Add the whole shebang up, and her 40-hour job is actually demanding over 60 hours of her life every single week. But wait, it actually gets worse. Because this invisible machine isn't just stealing Zoe's time, it's actively taxing her income. Think about all the hidden costs just to show up, paying for gas to sit in gridlock, the maintenance on that leased SUV, buying and dry cleaning an expensive corporate wardrobe so she looks the part. And then there are those daily expensive lattes she buys just to feel awake enough to survive the morning drive.
All of these are mandatory expenses required just to keep the 40-hour illusion running.
Which leads us to the biggest, stealthiest tax of the whole thing, burnout spending. Because Zoe is completely exhausted from giving her job 60 hours of her physical and mental energy every week, she simply doesn't have it in her to do basic things, like cook dinner. So what happens? She's forced to spend money on conveniences. She orders a $25 takeout meal, she pays premium fees for grocery delivery. She is literally spending the money she just earned simply to survive the exhaustion of earning. All right, let's look at the final scoreboard here and run the math. If you take Zoe's high salary, subtract her massive hidden costs, the thousands of dollars spent on gas, car maintenance, clothes, and burnout takeout, and then divide that new, much smaller number by her actual 60-hour commitment, her true hourly wage plummets. But Robert, sure, he makes less on paper, but his expenses are near zero. He doesn't commute, he doesn't buy expensive suits. When he clocks out at 5 p.m., he is actually done, so he cooks his own meals. You subtract his near zero expenses and divide by a true 40 hours, the result? Robert's actual hourly wage is higher than Zoe's. No way, right? But it's true. And that brings us to this ultimate realization, the mathematical trap of the massive salary. Zoe took a promotion that gave her a larger number on a screen. But to get that number, she essentially traded away her actual wealth, her energy, and her freedom. She fell completely into the trap of chasing a gross income figure without ever pausing to look at the hidden costs attached to it. So how do you actually fix this? Well, the source material lays out 4 clear, actionable steps for opting out of this trap. Step 1, calculate your true hourly wage honestly, factoring in every single minute of prep, commute, and recovery. Step 2, widen the gap between what you earn and what you spend by eliminating that burnout spending. Step 3, aggressively protect your time. Remember, time is the denominator in your wealth formula. And finally, step 4, step off the treadmill. Seriously, remember that you are allowed to look at a prestigious job, do the math, realize it's a terrible deal, and just actively choose the flexible job instead. Now, for those who realize their true hourly wage is lower than they thought and want to start pulling some levers to fix it, Nick shares his own specific method for building wealth in the background. He runs a school community, linked in his original description, where he teaches the boring math, the spreadsheets, and his personal strategy, which is building and scaling faceless YouTube channels from scratch. He presents this as a real second income that can just run in the background. It's offered neutrally, no high-pressure sales or fake account down timers, just a solid option for those looking to build independent income. Which leads us to this incredibly powerful final thought from our source. The goal was never just to earn a bigger number. The goal was to be free. Once you understand the hidden math of the true hourly wage, honestly, everything changes. You can never look at a massive salary and a brutal commute the exact same way again. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to think about. When you look at your own daily schedule, are you actually keeping your own time? Or is the invisible machine quietly keeping it for you?